Have you ever noticed how some people seem to possess an almost mystical ability to control the energy around them without uttering a single word? They don't argue, they don't plead, they simply retreat into silence, and suddenly everything around them begins to shift. The air changes, people start to question, to chase, to feel. The silence becomes a mirror, a portal, a force. Now imagine if you chose that silence, not as a shield, but as a power, not as an escape, but as a return. What if, instead of reacting immediately to every situation, you paused? Instead of explaining, you simply observed? What would change in your world if you withheld your energy just long enough to understand where it was truly needed? This story is not about abandonment. It's about reclaiming. It's about Carl Jung's quiet revolution, individuation, the art of becoming whole. Tonight, I invite you into a space where stillness speaks and the breath of awareness gently pulls back the curtains of illusion. You are not here to fix the world. You are here to meet yourself. Let the journey begin. You were taught to always be there, to answer, to explain, to fix. Since childhood, the echo of expectation followed you like a shadow. Be kind, be useful, be agreeable, say yes, even when you meant no. And so, over time, you became a reflection of others' needs, a mirror of convenience, always shining light on their wounds, while your own remained untouched. But now, you feel it. The weight, the fatigue, the quiet despair that builds in the corners of your chest at the end of a long day, not because you did too little, but because you gave too much. And this is the moment where something begins to stir inside you, a small, flickering awareness. Perhaps silence isn't absence. Perhaps it's presence, amplified. Carl Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to a better understanding of ourselves." If you listen closely to what frustrates you, what exhausts you, what keeps you awake at night, you'll hear your soul whispering where you've abandoned yourself. You've always been available, emotionally, mentally, physically, and that constant availability has made you predictable, easy to find, easy to use.
The world has a way of training us to be responsive.
Be quick, be helpful, be agreeable. But in the process, you learn to betray your own rhythm. You jump to answer texts while your body pleads for rest. You force a smile when your spirit needs quiet. You keep peace with people who bring storms. And every time you say yes when your inner being whispers no, you hand over a piece of yourself. But you don't have to live like that anymore. Because right now, in this moment, you are being called back to stillness, back to discernment, back to truth. You're not here to be a sponge for the emotions of others. You are not here to absorb chaos. You are here to radiate presence, but only when it's sacred to do so. So let's breathe together. Inhale. Notice the space inside your chest. Exhale. Notice how much lighter it feels when you're not carrying everyone else's weight. You've confused compassion with sacrifice, but compassion without boundaries is self-erasure.
This story is your reminder that silence can be sacred,
that solitude is not loneliness, it is communion with self. There is power in stepping back, power in not answering, power in choosing when to be seen. And here, in the quiet of this story, in the slow rhythm of your breath, you begin to remember you are not here to serve as someone else's emotional emergency button.
You are here to become whole.
Carl Jung called this process individuation, the integration of all your parts, not for the sake of perfection, but for the sake of authenticity. So what would happen if you embraced the discomfort of not explaining yourself, of not reacting, of being misunderstood? You would begin to reclaim your energy, and that is the beginning of your healing. You'll never heal until you stop filling the silence with apologies. You'll never heal until you stop trying to be understood by people committed to misunderstanding you. So tonight, you choose silence.
Not as punishment.
As peace. And as your body sinks deeper into comfort, let these words anchor you. You owe no one your energy. You owe no one your explanation. You owe no one your immediate response. You owe yourself the life you abandoned in order to be loved. And it begins now, with this breath, with this silence, with this story. Sleep to your soul. The healing has already begun. Silence is not the absence of sound. It's the space where truth echoes. After we've pulled away from the noise, the demands, the masks, we are left with something much more intimidating. Ourselves, but not the version of ourselves others see, the one that nods, smiles, replies, adapts. No, I mean the version of you that appears in silence, the one you hardly know. It's here, in this stillness, that the real healing begins. You see, you've been conditioned to respond, to fill the silence, to fix, to prove, to please. Since childhood, perhaps your nervous system has associated silence with disapproval, with danger, because silence meant something was wrong. But what if silence doesn't mean rejection? What if silence is your sanctuary? Carl Jung understood that the psyche thrives not when it is constantly stimulated, but when it is given space to unfold, to observe, to feel.
Yes, suffering doesn't grow because you are weak. It grows because you are disconnected, fragmented, chasing answers in external noise when the only meaningful ones are buried beneath your own skin.
Tonight, you are not here to be entertained. You are here to soften, to release, to allow, to listen without pressure to respond, to breathe without needing to prove that you're okay. Let the stillness hold you. Let it speak. Let it undo the tightness in your chest. Tonight, you are not here to be productive. You are here to remember that you exist outside of what you do, outside of what you solve, outside of what others expect from you.
Jung called this process of returning to oneself individuation, the unfolding of your authentic self, unedited, unmasked.
But to begin that unfolding, you must be willing to sit in the discomfort of not knowing what comes next, not knowing who approves.
Not knowing who stays or leaves.
The silence is not punishing you. It's purifying you. Let yourself breathe. Let the space between your thoughts grow wider. Let your heartbeat become the rhythm of your presence. Notice the air around you, the sounds in the distance, the quiet inside your belly. You are not broken. You are not behind. You are not too much or too little. You are simply human, unraveling, returning. And that is enough. Let the blanket wrap around you like a soft truth. You don't need to explain tonight. You don't need to impress tonight. There is no one to save. There is no one to fix. Just you in the silence. And perhaps for the first time in a long while, that is exactly what your soul has been aching for. So stay in this space, even if it stings at first. Even if the voice inside says you should get up. Check the phone, do something. But don't worry. I've got you. Search Natasha. Because what's on the other side of this silence is not emptiness. It's clarity. It's calm. It's you. And you are worth meeting. You are worth knowing. You are worth the space it takes to become whole. Stay here a little longer. And listen. Not with your ears, but with your being. Because the silence is not absence. It is a presence. So full, so loving, so quietly alive, that the noise of the world could never compete. Welcome home. Let sleep take you gently. Let healing be quiet, and let yourself rest, without apology. There was a time when you believed that silence meant defeat, that walking away was weakness, that not replying was surrender. But there's something nobody taught you. Sometimes silence is a roar, so loud it unsettles the foundations of manipulation. The third night in this journey of self-reclamation begins not with the sound of your voice, but with its absence. And in that absence, a quiet revolution begins. Imagine you're standing in the middle of a circle of people. Each of them has known you, not as you are, but as the version of you they could manage. The always available, always responding, ever-pleasing version. They toss words at you like hooks. They expect the usual defense, explanation, apology. But now, you don't react. There is no panic, no justification, just stillness. The silence becomes a mirror. One by one, they begin to see themselves in it, not you. And this is where their discomfort begins, because when you stop playing the role, they're forced to meet the person behind the projection, and often they're not ready. Carl Jung wrote of the shadow, the unconscious part of the psyche that holds everything we've disowned about ourselves. Every time you stop reacting, you stop feeding someone else's shadow. You stop being their scapegoat, their emotional sponge, their projection screen. Instead, you become sovereign, a mystery they can no longer decode. It is in this space, this withdrawal from automatic reactions, that you begin to feel your energy returning. You no longer pour it into empty arguments or futile attempts to be understood by those committed to misunderstanding you. You are no longer a slave to every impulse or every passive-aggressive message. You begin to choose. And it's this choosing, this quiet, conscious selecting of where your energy flows, that rebuilds your center. Slowly, what was once scattered becomes whole again. Tonight, let your breathing anchor you in this choice. Inhale, and feel the power of not reacting. Exhale, and release the habit of over-explaining with every breath. Imagine your psychic energy sealing like a golden light, drawing inward, protecting what is sacred. You are learning now what few are brave enough to master: strategic unavailability. The people who once knew how to shake your peace will try again. They will poke at the places that once bled easily. But when they find stillness instead of chaos, confusion instead of predictability, the game collapses. And so one by one, the roles begin to fade. Not because you're cruel, but because you're clear. Jung taught that individuation, the process of becoming fully yourself, often begins in solitude. But solitude is not loneliness. It is sacred space. It is the womb of reinvention. Here in the quiet, you remember your true voice, the one you silenced for the comfort of others. Tonight, let go of the need to be liked. Let go of the need to be understood. Let go of the belief that silence is failure. Because in truth, silence is strategy. It is a map back to yourself. And as the rain begins to tap gently on the windows of your inner world, let it lull you deeper. Let each drop remind you that not every sound needs your response. Some moments are meant only to be felt, not fixed. So now, close your eyes. Imagine a sanctuary made of quiet, walls of stillness, a ceiling of soft light, and in the center, you, no longer reactive, no longer performing, simply present, whole, home. And if your mind wanders, gently return to this space with a whisper. My silence is power. My peace is sacred. Because you, dear listener, are no longer available for chaos. You are becoming untouchable. There comes a moment, quiet and unannounced, when you begin to see with new eyes. Not the eyes you've always used to scan for approval, validation, or connection, but the eyes of your soul, awakening from emotional anesthesia. In that moment, you don't just see others more clearly, you see yourself. And what you begin to notice is draining. You notice how certain people only reach out when they're in pain, but never when you are. How they lean on you with the weight of their chaos, but vanish when silence is all you ask for. These are not coincidences. These are energetic imbalances. parasitic in nature, and no, they don't come with sharp fangs or malicious intentions. Often, they come wrapped in affection, in shared history, in words like "I need you" or "only you understand me." But here's what Jung teaches us. Unconsciousness feeds unconsciousness. Emotional parasites aren't always villain. Sometimes they're just people stuck in their wounds, desperately clinging to any source of stability, including you. But when you become their emotional infrastructure, you lose yourself. You become scaffolding for a building that is not your own. You begin to bend. At first it feels like empathy. You listen, you stay up late. You carry what's not yours, because that's what you were taught. Being good means being there. But little by little, your boundaries blur, your needs dim, your silence grows louder, and you don't notice it until you do. Until you wake up one morning exhausted from conversations that went nowhere, until your heart feels heavy from stories that aren't yours. Until you realize you haven't had a quiet thought in days because someone else's chaos has taken up residence inside your mind. This, Jung would say, is the shadow of compassion, the place where your kindness is no longer a gift, but a gateway. And this is where individuation begins to test you, because now you must do something radical. You must retreat, not out of cruelty, not out of pride, but out of self-preservation. And that, for many, is unforgivable. The moment you stop being always available, the moment your yes becomes a maybe or a no, the emotional parasites begin to panic. Not because they love you, but because they fear the mirror going dark, because your presence gave them something they didn't want to find within. Your light helped them ignore their darkness. Your availability allowed them to avoid their own silence. When you retreat, they are forced to face it. The manipulator, the controller, the endlessly needy friend. They don't lose you, they lose their control. And control is a drug. Your withdrawal becomes their withdrawal symptom. And here's the most painful truth. Some of the people you love most will not handle your healing. They loved you broken. They bonded with you through wounds, not wholeness. So when you begin to pull back, when you start listening to your own breath instead of their stories, when you choose quiet evenings alone instead of endless emotional rescues, they will resist. They will call you selfish, cold, changed. And in a way, they'll be right. You are changed, but not into something worse, into something sacred. You're no longer fuel for someone else's fire. You're your own hearth, your own flame, and your own warmth. Jung teaches that every act of individuation is an act of separation. And not all separations come with conflict. Some come with silence, some with space, some with deep grief that echoes through every room you once filled with your availability. But beneath that grief is clarity. You begin to see who was walking beside you because they cared, and who was only walking beside you because you were carrying the weight. And in that stillness, something profound begins to rise. You rediscover your own emotional landscape. The hills you flattened to make space for others. The gardens you left unwatered while tending theirs. The broken parts you ignored to keep their glass castle from shattering. Now, it's time to return to your breath, to your needs, to your natural rhythm, to your voice that had grown so quiet you almost forgot how it sounded when it wasn't echoing someone else's pain. This reclamation will not be loud. It will not be announced. There will be no applause, but there will be peace, and that peace is priceless. So now, in the space of intentional silence, ask yourself, where have I poured too much? Whose storm have I made my home? Whose chaos have I confused for connection? And most importantly, who am I when I am no longer holding the emotional weight of others? Let the silence answer. It will not lie. And in the next part of our journey, we will explore what happens when you begin to protect your energy as a sacred currency, no longer handed out, but invested wisely. You are not cruel for stepping away. You are courageous because you finally remembered You deserve peace too. There comes a moment in every inner journey where you no longer ask yourself whether you should pull away from the world, but how. Not out of bitterness, not from anger, but from clarity. And in that clarity, a new boundary begins to take shape. The sacred art of saying no. Saying no is not rejection. It is self-recognition. You've likely been conditioned to believe that denying a request is selfish, that silence in place of reply is rude, that boundaries are walls and not windows. But in truth, every no you've never said has turned into a hidden yes to your exhaustion, to your resentment, to your slow erosion. And so begins the quiet reclamation of your soul. When Jung spoke of individuation, he spoke of a process that naturally separated you from collective expectations. The crowd wants your attention, the world wants your compliance, but your soul, it wants your peace. What if you stopped over-explaining? What if your refusal was just a breath, not a debate? Imagine this. You receive a message. You feel that old twitch, the automatic pull to respond, to be available, to reassure, to perform. But something has changed. You wait. You breathe. You check in with your inner weather. And then softly but firmly, you type, "Not today." That's where healing begins. Not in dramatic withdrawals, but in micro acts of sovereignty. There is immense power in small withdrawals. You start reclaiming the hours you spent crafting perfect responses, the energy you poured into appeasing others, the presents you handed out like flyers on a street corner. You don't need to be a lighthouse for every lost ship. Some storms are not yours to calm. It's okay to go quiet.
It's okay to leave a message unread.
It's okay to let people misunderstand you. Because your energy is not a community resource. It is sacred. And sacred things require gates. You've been giving from a deep well without noticing the water level dropping. You've been applauded for your empathy, praised for your understanding, celebrated for your availability. But no one has seen the tired eyes behind the smile, the breath you hold when you reply yes, out of guilt, the weight you carry when you say, "I'm here," even when you're not. This is your permission to stop. Stop being everywhere. Stop trying to fix what isn't yours. Stop offering what drains you. Boundaries are not a punishment, they are a form of love. A love letter to your nervous system. A lullaby to your tired mind. A quiet declaration to your soul. I will no longer abandon you to be accepted by others. Let the silence speak where words no longer serve you. Let your absence be the answer they never expected. Let your refusal be the mirror they weren't ready to face. Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, and to become that, you will have to choose solitude over applause, stillness over reaction, clarity over confusion. You will have to walk away from people who only loved you when you had no boundaries. You will have to lose roles in order to reclaim your essence. But in that letting go, something astonishing happens. The right people remain, the real connections deepen, and the peace that once felt impossible begins to bloom in silence." So tonight, as your body settles and your thoughts slow, breathe into this truth. You are allowed to be unavailable. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to choose yourself again and again, not because you are selfish, but because you are sacred. Let that be your final thought before sleep takes you. And if you forget tomorrow, this story will be here, waiting to remind you. There is a kind of silence that is not absence, but presence intensified. The world often mistakes it for passivity, or even coldness, but in truth, it is the silence of someone who has finally stopped trying to be understood by those who were never truly listening. In this part of our journey, we begin to understand that the quiet we once feared is the very shield that can protect our deepest truths. Carl Jung taught that when we withdraw our projections, those fragments of ourselves that we cast onto others, we begin to see not only who they truly are, but who we have always been. Projection keeps us entangled. Withdrawal, however, sets us free. This freedom begins in stillness, in resisting the compulsion to react, to justify, to correct every misunderstanding. Most people live their lives seeking validation, caught in a cycle of explanation and correction. But the one who dares to remain silent amid provocation has found a different kind of power. Have you ever noticed how silence can disarm an argument, unnerve a manipulator, or bring sudden clarity to chaos? That is not coincidence. It is energy no longer wasted. Silence, when conscious, is the reclamation of that energy. It is the quiet armor of the soul. But wearing that armor requires courage, because when you stop playing the role others expect of you, they panic. They accuse you of changing, of becoming distant or difficult. In truth, what you've changed is your willingness to be used, and that is what threatens them most. You are no longer a mirror for their projections. You are now a presence, and that presence, forged in silence, speaks more powerfully than 1,000 words. In this state, you begin to understand what it means to be sovereign over yourself. Your no becomes sacred, your time precious, your energy guarded, not out of fear, but out of wisdom. The more you honor this silence, the more you begin to discern what is noise and what is truth. You stop explaining your boundaries. You simply live them. You stop defending your peace. You protect it by existing in it. This doesn't mean becoming unavailable to love or connection. On the contrary, it means making space only for that which honors your essence. It means loving without losing yourself, giving without depleting, listening without absorbing everyone else's chaos. Carl Jung called this individuation the process of becoming your whole self, not in the image others want, but in alignment with your soul. Individuation requires discernment, and discernment thrives in silence. The silence becomes a field, a space where you can hear the voice within, the voice that doesn't shout, but whispers, that doesn't seek applause, but authenticity. You begin to notice things others miss, the hidden motives behind compliments, the energy behind words, the tension in rooms that speak louder than speech. Your awareness sharpens, your reactions soften. You no longer need to win arguments, because you no longer need to be right. You just need to be real. And realness doesn't shout, it glows. But let us be honest, the path of silence is not easy. It confronts every part of us that wants to be seen, heard, loved, accepted. It brings up the wounds of childhood, the fear of rejection, the ache of abandonment. That's why silence is not for the faint of heart. It is the path of the brave, the path of the soul warrior. And here is the paradox. Only when you stop seeking to be understood do you begin to understand yourself. Only when you stop reacting do you begin to respond with wisdom. Only when you embrace the void do you find the fullness that was always waiting for you. So tonight, let this story hold you. Let it remind you that silence is not emptiness. It is space, and space is sacred. Let every breath guide you deeper into your own presence. Let every pause between my words be a doorway to your own knowing. The quiet you once feared is your sanctuary now. And in this sanctuary, your healing begins anew. Rest here. Let go. You are safe in the silence. And then, one day, you wake up, not with fanfare, not with thunder or applause, but with a stillness so deep, it silences even your most persistent thoughts. You open your eyes and it's not the room that's changed, it's you. That quiet morning marks the first true return. You no longer feel the frantic pull to check your phone, respond to messages, or be on. You simply lie there breathing and realize Peace is not something you earn, it's something you stop interrupting. Carl Jung believed that true individuation begins when the unconscious is no longer avoided, when instead of running from silence we sit with it, when we stop treating stillness as emptiness and start seeing it as sacred. It is in this sacred silence that your healing deepens, because now, finally, you are not reacting, you are not performing, you are not pleasing, you are not shrinking or expanding for anyone else's comfort. You are simply being, and it is in this being, this undisturbed, unapologetic, sovereign presence, that life begins to reorganize itself around your truth. People who thrived on your overgiving begin to drift. Environments that once depended on your self-abandonment no longer feel familiar, and instead of chasing explanations, you allow the departures. You don't beg. You bless.
You don't unravel.
You understand. Jung spoke of the necessity of this sacred solitude, not as loneliness, but as the essential container for the psyche to reorganize. And now, you see why. Because in this solitude, you start hearing a new voice. Your own. A voice no longer distorted by fear, no longer shaped by the need to be liked, approved, understood. A voice not crafted for performance, but rooted in presence. You find it in the pauses between breaths, in the slow closing of your eyes before sleep, in the way you no longer fill every moment with noise. That voice whispered, "You are not broken. You were just too loud to hear yourself. And now that you're quiet, deeply, radically, joyfully quiet, you can finally begin to listen to your instincts, to your needs, to your longing, to your limits."
And through this listening, something even more precious emerges.
Discernment. You begin to know without a doubt who belongs, what nourishes, where you end, and others begin. You no longer confuse kindness with self-erasure. You no longer confuse availability with worth. You no longer confuse being seen with being safe. Carl Jung warned that healing is not about comfort, it's about truth. And truth often comes wrapped in discomfort, in silence, in loss. But oh, how sacred that loss becomes when you see what it makes room for. Now, instead of reacting to every provocation, you smile. Instead of explaining, you exhale. Instead of proving, you pause. You are not the same, not because you learned more, but because you unlearned the compulsion to abandon yourself. You are not healed because everything is resolved. You are healing because you now refuse to betray your peace. In this 7th chapter of your return, you are no longer surviving. You are remembering who you were before the world taught you to perform, who you were before the roles and masks and contortion, who you were in silence, in stillness, in sacred inner space. And it's not dramatic, it's not loud, it's not a battle, it's a homecoming, one breath at a time, one boundary at a time, one soft no at a time. And in this homecoming, you become untouchable, not because you harden, but because you soften into truth, and truth, when embodied, becomes unshakable. So rest now. Let these words cradle the parts of you that are still tender. Let the quiet wrap around your nervous system like a balm. Let yourself remember, you don't have to do more.
You don't have to fix anything.
You don't have to chase peace. You are peace when you are no longer at war with your own silence. And as you drift into sleep, may this silence not feel empty, but full of the you that you finally come home to. Sleep well, sovereign soul. You've already arrived. You've likely noticed by now that true transformation doesn't come from adding more noise, more input, more explanations. It comes from the silent, patient, unwavering decision to shift your presence. In this part of your journey, you're beginning to understand what Carl Jung meant when he spoke of individuation, the process of becoming whole. And wholeness, true wholeness, requires a deep understanding of your own psychic energy and the discipline to withhold it. When you become unavailable, not out of punishment, but out of self-respect. You begin to harness a kind of power that the modern world barely understands, because we are taught that love means sacrifice, that attention means validation, that silence is a punishment. But in reality, silence is one of the most sacred and strategic acts of healing. It is the soil in which your true identity takes root. Let's consider how many times you've betrayed your own peace, just to be understood. How often have you replied to messages when you were exhausted? How often have you said yes, only to feel resentment rise in your chest moments later? How many emotional explanations have you given, hoping that if you explained well enough they'd finally understand? Here's the truth. Explanation doesn't lead to understanding, especially not with those who are never listening to begin with. The human psyche, Jung believed, operates much like a closed energy system. Every interaction, every emotional surge, every verbal response, every justification requires energy. When you give too much of it away, you dilute the essence of who you are. You become spread thin, disconnected, reactive. But the moment you become unavailable, not in anger, not in silence as punishment, but in conscious self-preservation, you reclaim energy that was never meant to be scattered. Your energy, when contained, becomes presence, and presence is magnetic. There is a moment in every seeker's path when the urge to be seen transforms into the need to see oneself. This is that moment. You are being called to step away from being a constant responder, a performer, a fixer. You are being called to stand still in your own center and allow the silence to speak for you. Silence terrifies those who need your reaction to maintain control. That's why they push your buttons. That's why they guilt you into speaking, into explaining, into returning to the role they need you to play. But you are no longer here to play roles. You are here to reclaim. Reclaim your time. Reclaim your attention. Reclaim your emotions. There's a sacredness in becoming a mystery, in not being easily accessible, in being the one who pauses before replying, who disappears to restore, who no longer engages with the chaos. People who thrive on access to your energy will protest. They'll say you've changed. They'll call you cold. They'll accuse you of arrogance. But what they're really saying is, I can no longer control you. And that is the beginning of your freedom. Silence does not mean absence. It means sovereignty. It means you have stopped reacting in order to start responding, consciously, intentionally, from a place of clarity.
Jung taught that individuation, the process of becoming fully yourself, requires you to break from the collective, to remove the mask, to walk alone for a while.
That solitude isn't a punishment. It is a chrysalis. Inside that silence, your wounds breathe. Your mind softens. Your body recalibrates. You stop grasping for answers outside of you and begin listening to the gentle truth rising from within. Here's what many never tell you. When you become unavailable, when you reclaim your energy, you become valuable. And those who only knew how to value your availability will no longer find comfort in your presence. That is not a loss. That is an unveiling. Because now, those who remain, those who come closer, even when you are not constantly giving, are the ones who see your essence, not your function. So I ask you now, are you willing to be misunderstood so that you can finally be whole? Are you willing to walk through the discomfort of being misread so that your truth can breathe? You are no longer here to be the emotional emergency room for the world. You are here to rest. You are here to listen inward. You are here to reclaim all that you gave away in exchange for approval. In the next part, we will journey even deeper into the architecture of energetic protection. You'll discover how to discern where your energy goes, how to recognize the invisible contracts you've agreed to, and how to sever the cords that keep you trapped in cycles of depletion. For now, let the silence wrap around you like a soft blanket. Let the idea of being unseen feel like a sacred reprieve, not a punishment. You do not need to shine for everyone. You do not need to explain to anyone. You only need to breathe. You only need to be. Silence is not just an absence of sound. It is the presence of self. And in that presence, you begin to feel everything you once silenced. The fears, the longings, the unresolved conversations, the truths you tried to bury beneath distractions. As you sit with yourself, fully and without filters, a strange transformation begins. What was once unbearable becomes tolerable. What was once loud within you begins to soften, not because it disappears, but because it is finally being heard. Carl Jung believed that true healing cannot occur until we turn inward, not superficially, not intellectually, but with full presence, sinking into the dark waters of our inner world and letting them reveal what they must. This is the silence he spoke of, the kind that does not erase the pain, but embraces it, that does not seek to run from shadow, but to understand its shape. Have you ever noticed how hard it is to sit still with no noise? No phone, no music, no one to text, just you and your thoughts. At first they race, they loop, they accuse, they replay old dialogues like broken records. But if you wait, if you breathe through that discomfort, a new layer appears, a softer layer, one that is not made of judgment or panic, but of stillness. There you find insights that were never available in the noise, emotions that were never allowed to speak, needs that were silenced because they didn't fit the expectations of the world around you. In silence, the persona begins to fade. That mask you crafted to be liked, accepted, admired. You begin to remember who you were before the world told you who to be. And in that remembering, you rediscover power. Not dominance, not control, but sovereignty. Sovereignty is knowing what belongs to you and what doesn't. It's the awareness that you don't owe anyone your explanation, your instant availability, or your peace. It's recognizing that your time, your attention, your energy are sacred currencies, and you no longer spend them where they are not respected. Most people are afraid of silence because it strips them of performance. They no longer know what to say when there is nothing to say. They can't hide behind jokes, tasks, plans, or opinions. In silence, truth reveals itself, and truth, though healing, can be confrontational. But for those who are brave enough to stay, who breathe through the initial chaos and reach the stillness, something else happens. An inner clarity emerges, an intuitive knowing that does not need to be proved. You begin to sense what is good for you, what isn't, and what you must now release. In this part of your healing, you may notice an urge to remove yourself, not in sadness or retreat, but in sacred withdrawal. You crave spaces with fewer voices, fewer distractions, fewer demands. You start craving authenticity like oxygen, and the places and people who once entertained you may now exhaust you. This is not arrogance, it's awakening. Carl Jung called this individuation, the process of becoming whole, and becoming whole requires that you are no longer split between your truth and your performance, no longer torn between what you feel and what you pretend to feel. So what now? You listen, you watch, you breathe. Let the silence be your teacher. Let it guide you to the parts of you that have been silenced not because they were weak, but because they were powerful and too much for the world to handle. You were never meant to be available to everyone. You were meant to be deeply present with yourself. And from that presence, decide. Not react, not justify, just decide. Because when silence becomes your home, no chaos can remove you from your center. You are no longer moved by the waves of emotion that belong to others. You are no longer imprisoned by the urgency of those who do not understand stillness. You become unshakable. So tonight, as the world falls asleep and all the noise fades into the distance, allow yourself to return to yourself, to that quiet, unwavering part of you that has waited so patiently for you to come home.
In the next part, We will explore the solitude that emerges from this silence and why this sacred solitude is not loneliness but a powerful aloneness that liberates the soul.
Sleep peacefully now. You are safe in the silence, and you are finally free. There is a kind of transformation that only silence can bring. A quiet that is not the absence of sound, but the presence of your own soul returning to itself. When you stop filling the void with noise, external or internal, you begin to hear what has always been there, waiting patiently in the background. Your truth. In the quiet, your scattered pieces slowly start to reassemble. Your emotions that once rushed like unfiltered rivers now settle like a calm lake. The mind that raced in spirals now finds rhythm in stillness. This is the sacred still point within you, where the heart speaks in whispers, and for the first time you're willing to listen. Carl Jung believed that healing does not happen through suppression, but through integration. The very things we avoid, the emotions we repress, the fears we bury, the memories we refuse to revisit, are the gateways to our wholeness, and silence gives them a space to speak. You may have noticed how silence feels uncomfortable at first, like something is missing, but it's not emptiness, it's unfamiliar fullness. You're not used to your own presence without distraction. You're not used to confronting what's underneath the doing, the responding, the performing, but this confrontation is your invitation. In silence, grief will rise. So will guilt. Memories you thought you outran will appear again, asking not to be feared, but understood. You might feel sadness that has no name, and ache that has no source. Let it come, let it all surface, because as it does, your nervous system begins to unwind, your breath becomes deeper, the body releases stored tension you didn't know you were carrying. This is not regression, it's repair. You'll cry, maybe unexpectedly, maybe in the middle of the night with no trigger but your own truth. Let the tears fall. They are ancient. They have waited for you. You are not breaking down. You are breaking open into more space, into clarity, into compassion. And the more you hold space for yourself in this silence, the less you need others to fill it. You begin to see how many of your relationships were built on noise, on exchange, on mutual avoidance of inner work. When you stop playing the role, the dynamics shift. Some people will disappear. Let them. Their absence creates room for someone else. Someone who will not fear your depth or ask you to shrink. Someone who values your silence as much as your voice. But even if that person doesn't arrive, you are no longer starving for connection. You found home within. This solitude becomes sacred. Not lonely, but luminous. Not cold, but comforting. Because you're no longer entertaining the personas that once exhausted you. You're sitting with the essence of who you are. And here's where the magic begins. Your intuition sharpens. Ideas come in images, not analysis. Decisions feel like resonance, not calculation. You find that you don't need to convince anyone of your worth. It simply is. This level of peace does not come from changing your environment. It comes from changing your relationship to yourself. Silence trains you to stop outsourcing your value, to stop seeking permission to rest, to speak to. It gives you the courage to disappoint others in order to stay true to yourself, to choose peace over approval, to walk away when the room no longer holds your soul. In this silence, you become fluent in your own energy. You start to notice subtle shifts, what drains you, what uplifts you, what brings you back to center. You become a careful steward of your emotional landscape, planting only what you wish to grow. This is what Jung meant when he said that healing is not about becoming good, it's about becoming whole. Wholeness includes the shadow, the rage, the ache, the longing, but it also includes the wonder, the softness, the joy. Silence allows it all to coexist without needing to fix any of it, without trying to be someone else. And as you rest in this sacred space, You find that the world around you no longer has the same power over you. You respond less. You react less. You engage only when your energy says yes. People may not understand, let them misunderstand. Your healing is not for their comfort. Your silence is not a threat. It is your return. So tonight, breathe deeply. Let the quiet wrap around you like a warm blanket. Listen not for answers, but for presence. Let go of the need to fix, to change, to figure it all out. Just be, because in that being, healing begins. In the next part, we will go even deeper into how your silence reveals who truly values your soul and how to gently navigate the loneliness that sometimes comes with growth. For now, simply rest. You are exactly where you need to be. You've come so far. You've walked through the wilderness of your emotions, sat with the ache of loneliness, and dared to listen to the silence most people avoid. And now you're standing at the edge of something ending and something beginning. A quiet shift is underway. It doesn't roar. It hums, low, like a distant drumbeat. It tells you that everything is changing. This is the moment where most turn back, not because the old life was better, but because the new one asks for something terrifying. Rebirth. But before the new can arrive, the last layer must fall away. And that layer is attachment to identity. You were the helper, the fixer, the listener, the one who held everyone together, the emotionally available one, the one who swallowed their needs just to keep peace. That identity gave you meaning until it began to suffocate you. Carl Jung wrote that we meet ourselves time and again in 1,000 disguises on the path of life. Every version of you, every mask, every performance, it served a purpose. But now it is time to meet yourself without disguise. Here is the truth. The self that was born from wounds is not your final self. So ask yourself now, without fear, who are you when you are no longer a role? Who are you when no one needs you? Who are you when you owe nothing, explain nothing, prove nothing? You may not have all the answers yet, and that's okay, because the truth is not something we decide. It is something we remember. And you are starting to remember. You are remembering that your peace matters more than the comfort of others, that your silence is not weakness, but wisdom, that your unavailability is not rejection, but realignment, and that you never had to prove your worth, only protect your energy.
This part of the journey is quiet, not because nothing is happening, but because everything that matters now is happening within.
It's the rewiring of your nervous system, no longer driven by guilt or fear.
It's the restoration of your intuition, no longer drowned out by noise.
It's the realignment of your boundaries, not as walls, but as sacred lines of clarity.
You are not retreating. You are rooting.
You are not cutting people off. You are returning to connection with yourself.
You are not becoming cold. You are becoming clear. And clarity feels strange at first. It feels like distance. It feels like solitude. But with time, it will begin to feel like truth. So breathe here. Rest here. There's no need to rush into the next transformation. Just be. Because in the sacred pause between who you were and who you are becoming, a deeper presence is born. It is here, in this tender quiet, that your voice returns. Not the voice conditioned to be soft, so others feel comfortable. Not the voice that explains, justifies, or asks for permission, but the voice of your knowing, the voice of your soul, the voice of your essence. And when that voice speaks, it doesn't ask, it declares.
It says, I will no longer abandon myself for comfort.
I will no longer perform peace at the cost of my own. I will no longer live in reaction. I will live in resonance. You are not just healing. You are evolving. You are no longer surviving by being needed. You are thriving by being whole. And that is the most sacred shift of all. Stay in the silence. Trust it. And in the next part, we will walk together through the final gate, the place where solitude turns to power, where presence becomes purpose, and where the self you've been waiting to meet finally arrives. You are almost home. This is it. The final threshold. The quiet beyond the noise. The stillness after the storm. You've walked through shadows, peeled back the masks, sat with the ache of detachment, and now you arrive. Not at a destination, but at a return. A homecoming to yourself. It doesn't come with fireworks. It doesn't announce itself. True healing never does. It comes like this. A breath that doesn't tremble. A thought that doesn't spiral. A silence that finally feels safe. You sit now in the temple of your own presence, alone, not as exile, but as reunion. You are not missing anything. You are not less without them. You are not broken without validation. You are full. You are whole. And from this wholeness, something begins. Carl Jung spoke of individuation as the process of becoming undivided. To separate from what others expect of you, from the personas you built, to survive, from the projections they placed on your back, to let them fall. And what is left? You, naked in truth, unapologetic in essence, gentle, sovereign, unshakable. You no longer chase connection. You attract resonance. You no longer explain your boundaries. You embody them. You no longer seek love as a transaction. You become love as a present. This is the quiet power that no one can take. It is not loud. It is not dramatic. It is not for show. It is how your feet touch the earth without needing to prove your place on it. It is how your eyes see clearly without trying to be understood. It is how your voice waits, not to react, but to choose whether it even needs to speak. And in this final part of your journey, you discover something few ever do.
That silence is not the absence of sound. It is the presence of you.
Pure, unfiltered, rooted. This silence doesn't separate you from the world. It connects you to it, deeper than ever before. Because only when you are no longer consumed by proving pleasing or performing can you truly listen to the wind, to the body, to the quiet wisdom that was always whispering beneath the surface noise. And so here, now in this stillness, you meet yourself. Not the version shaped by fear, not the version shaped by need, but the eternal you. The soul that has always been watching, waiting, guiding. You feel her now, not as a concept, as breath, as knowing, as peace. You are not who you were, but you were never lost. You were only buried beneath the noise, beneath the stories, beneath the world's demand. And now you are whole, not because everything makes sense, but because you no longer need it to. You carry your silence like a lantern now, not to hide, but to see. You walk slower, softer, but with more power than ever before. You have no desire to convince anyone of anything. You simply are. You do not force closeness. You honor space. You do not chase love. You live in alignment and let what aligns come. This is not just healing. This is awakening to your own energy, to your sacred rhythm, to the sound of your own soul. You were never too much. You were just in the wrong rooms. You were never broken. You were just being asked to break free. And now, here you are, breathing, resting, not waiting for anyone else to understand. You understand.
This is your final rite of passage, self-recognition.
You do not need permission to rest. You do not need approval to grow. You do not need anything external to affirm your internal worth. You are sovereign. You are safe. You are enough. So sleep now, not to escape, but to integrate. Let this silence hold you. Let this stillness rebuild you. Let this presence remind you. You never had to be louder to be seen. You just had to be you, exactly as you are, exactly as you've become, exactly who you were always meant to remember. And as your eyes close tonight, and your breath deepens, may you finally feel what you have longed for in 1,000 places, through 1,000 people. Peace. Peace not given. Peace claimed. Good night, soul traveler. Welcome home.